All right, this time out we start one of the most important concepts in physics, in fact in all of science, called energy. But we start it using an intermediate concept called work. One of the most important concepts in physics, and indeed, as I said earlier, in all of science, is something called energy, but it can be hard to define. To connect it to dynamics, we introduce a bridge concept called work. Work is one of these interstitial things that keep coming back and forth, even though it's not itself fundamentally that important. It's really useful for analyzing how systems work. Specifically, we're going to define the work done by a constant force F across a distance d as the work done, W, is F times d. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. This is really only valid if the force is constant in both time and space, if the path it follows is an actual line, and if the force is completely aligned with the displacement, in other words, the picture as drawn here, with the assumption that F does not change. Later on, we'll relax these constraints one by one, but it always comes back to this basic definition, and it's worth keeping back in your mind. Also, as a practical thing, students often then get hung up on this being the definition, and then when the more complicated things come about, they oversimplify and use this very simple relation. This is the seed, but it really isn't the whole idea, and you should be careful about how you incorporate it into your brain. Notice that work is the product of two magnitudes, which are each scalar, so the work itself is a scalar. It doesn't have a direction. You don't do work upward or do work eastward or anything like that. From the definition, we see that the dimensions of work would be the dimension of force, which is newtons, times the dimension of distance, which is meters, so we would end up with Newton meters. This is symbolized as N.m, but we usually work using a unit called the joule, J, named after a scientist named Joule, who first did a lot about the conversion of heat into work. And we define the joule, capital J, as 1 Newton meter. That is 1 kilogram meter per second squared times meter, or 1 kilogram meter square per second square. Although we don't tend to use this form, it will become very suggestive later as we talk about. It's kind of interesting that it's a mass times the square of a speed. To get some sense of scale, lifting your 3 kilogram textbook through a distance of 1.5 meters, say going from the floor back to your desk, takes about 44 joules of work. A joule is human scale, but somewhat small amount of work. You do joules all the time. Over here we have stolen from some textbook typical values of work, just which you can pursue. You're not expected to know all of these here, but you can say the typical heartbeat, for instance, is half a joule. So it's a real world, but kind of small amounts of energy or of work. The U.S. as a whole apparently uses about 9 quintillion, whatever that would be, times 10 to the 19 joules in a year. And 10 to the 18 would be how much Mount St. Helens exploded back in the early 80s. This reference, the Mount St. Helens explosion, is sort of very much dates the authors of our textbook, because that's very big in 1981. It was captured on film, which is kind of spectacular. And so people of a certain age, this is their reference for a lot of things that blow up. An important but perhaps unexpected corollary is that the object does not move, the force does not work, because d equals 0. That's very different from what you expect from the English use of the word work. For instance, if your homework were to go home and hold your textbook out at arm's length for 8 hours, you would likely feel your muscles getting fatigued, but you would do 0 joules of work on the book. Why the disconnect? Well, by human anatomy, your muscles are continually contracting, expanding, even when you're holding your hand still. About half the muscles are contracting and half are expanding, which is why there's a small twitch or quiver in your hand as you hold something. The muscle fibers do work on each other. The book doesn't work, though, so you don't do any work on it. For instance, your table bends once, but doesn't continually flex. So tables support books indefinitely without getting tired. They're not doing work on the book to hold it up the way your hand is. This is a key thing about biological systems. And for a long time, people thought biological systems were non-physical systems. They just had different rules than physical systems. But every time we look, we're able to figure out how they are actually dynamical systems. And there isn't a special life force or something that we have to worry about. There's just the way that nature has evolved certain structures that create that impression. All right, let's start relaxing those caveats. What if the force is not aligned, but rather makes some angle theta? So as we have over here. In that case, we use only the component of the force that lies along the motion, only the part of the force that is influenced what we actually see. Notice how different this is from Newton's laws. In Newton's laws, things are moment to moment. What's happening now tells me what's about to happen now, and then we string all those moments together to try and figure out what happens on here. Here we're saying, no, we know the object actually moved through this displacement, so only the force that helped or hindered that movement should be important. It's very different. It's very post facto, and that's kind of strange, but can be useful. In essence, we'll say that the only relevant portion of the force is the bit that contributes to the actual motion that goes on. Symbolically, we end up saying that we have that the work is not F times D, but F cos theta, because that's the part or component of the force along the motion. And we get a more traditional thing people write as FD cos theta. And this is the one that students tend to remember and then can sometimes make mistakes with. Let's go a little further on that. Consider the vectors F and the displacement and place them tail to tail. So they form the angle theta. And we can think of F as having two components, one along the motion, which I called Fx here, and one perpendicular, which was Fy. We see that Fx is F cos theta, and so we get the work is Fxd, because that's the part lying along the vector, and so we get, but Fx is F cos theta, so we get back to Fd cos theta. But you can instead think of this as being that D is broken into two parts, along the force and perpendicular to the force. And we'd find D parallel is also D cos theta. So we go the work back here to being FD parallel, right? F times the distance along which it acts. And we get again FD cos theta. It doesn't matter which way we look at it. Symbolically, we represent this as what's called a dot product of vectors. Work is F vector dotted into D vector, where this is now a form of multiplication, which we have not talked about yet. And we will define dot product of two vectors as their magnitudes times the cosine of the angle between them. This ends up being really useful mathematically. In math classes, they use it a lot. And for us, it's a good way of kind of seeing how aligned two things are. Because if the work is equal to just F times D, it means the two must have been fully aligned. It also lets us talk about what happens when the force points the other way. And we'll do that in a sec. Don't get fooled into thinking that the displacement has to be horizontal. So far, I've been drawing it that way. Or that the angle has to be called theta. So as an example, we have a 3 kilogram block sliding along 4 meters along an incline. It makes an angle of 22 degrees to the horizontal. What is the work done by gravity during this motion? And although it wasn't specified explicitly, we're going to take that the motion is down the incline. So let's say down an incline rather than along. That will be useful in a sec. We need the angle between the force and the displacement, which is not theta. We go over to the side here and we say, well, if this is the displacement and this is F, then this is the angle between them. So we want FGD cosine phi, right? We call it phi because theta is already used. We see that phi and theta are complementary, so phi is 90 minus theta. In this problem, it would be 68 degrees since theta was given as 22. And the work done is FG dot D, or FGD cos phi, or turns out to be 44 joules. There is a useful shortcut for gravity. The component of displacement along the way will always be the vertical height through which the object moves. So the work done by gravity as an object descends will always be mgh, right? No matter what you do here, the combination of d and theta will always be, d cos theta will always be that height. And so we can just use a shortcut there and not have to actually do any geometry. Gravity only knows about the vertical motion, and so only the vertical motion influences it. That can be useful, and later on will be tremendously impactful for us. A different and odd corollary to the definition of work done by an angle, a force which is perpendicular to the actual motion does zero work. For example, the string keeping a ball moving in uniform circular motion does no work on the ball, does zero work on the ball. Let's try and be consistent here. Because at any time, the tension points that way, but the displacement at any given instant points that way, and they're at right angles. So cosine of 90 is 0. This thing about 0 versus no work is just stressing that English no can mean two things. It can be fails to exist, or it can be have value of 0. I want to emphasize that the work is always computable. There's not a situation where where the work doesn't make sense, but sometimes it has a value of 0. We can also discuss what happens when a force opposes the motion that occurs. In such a case, the work will be negative because the angle is more than 90, and so the cosine is negative. Something like this is what we're talking about, where F goes against the things moving this way, but this force is tending to resist that rather than aid that. And this will come back really important when we do the work energy theorem in a couple of slides, in a couple of videos. And finally, we define the total work done during the motion as the simple sum of all the works done by the forces that act. The total work is W1 plus W2 plus whatever, and sometimes written as sigma W. Since work is the scalar quantity, these are just simple numbers and add normally. There's no reason to muck around with vector addition. No tip to tail for work. It's just numbers, just add them, which is nice. The textbook also likes to say that work total is the work done by the net force, but that can be risky because it can be hard to figure out, well, what is the displacement involved? For point particles, it's pretty simple. It can only be one displacement. But for extended objects, different parts can go through different motions, and therefore the displacements they take could be non-trivial. Finally, you might wonder if we're just adding stuff up, and when we added up stuff, we had the net force. We called the sum of the forces the net force. Why don't we call the sum of the works the net work? And you could do that, and that's perfectly legitimate, and you're certainly not crazy to do so. I don't like it because in English, network is a different word, right? If we say that is the net work, but you kind of slur the space, now it looks like it's the network, and I just don't like that confusion, so I say total work. But, you know, to each their own. Couple of problems to try. For each of these, once I finish reading them, pause the video, come up with your answer, and then I'll go over what they mean. So in the figures below, identical boxes of mass 10 kg moving at the same initial velocity they write on a flat surface. The same magnitude F is applied to each box in the instant for the distance D indicating the figure. Draw a blue circle around the situation or situations where the most work is done by F, and a red circle where the work done by F is least. Probably the easiest thing to do is actually just compute the works. So for A, it's going to be F times 5 meters. And for B, it's going to be F times 10 meters. So we already see that B is more than A. And here it's going to be, for C, it's going to be something less than F times 5 meters. Because we have only this component that matters. And here it's going to be 0 for D. And here it's going to be F times 5 meters times the cosine of 180, which is minus 1. So if we get rid of the units, we have 5F, 10F, less than 5F, but positive, 0, minus 5F, and over here again, 0. For D and F, it's because they have, they're perpendicular, so the cosine of 90 is 0. So if we look here, we can say that the blue one is the most happens for case B, without a doubt. And then a little trickier, the least happens for case E, because they didn't ask for a magnitude, which doesn't really make a lot of sense for work anyway. They asked for the actual work, and a negative work is less than 0 work. If you're going to rank them, these are usually rank questions, we would have something like E is less than D and F are the same, which is less than C, which is less than A, which is less than B. So if you want to do the whole thing, that's what that would look like. A block is pushed so it moves up a ramp at constant speed. Identify from the choices A through E the appropriate description for the work done by the specified force while the block moves from point A to B. The work done on the block by the hand. Well, the hand is pushing up the incline. The motion is up the incline. That's going to be positive, or C. The work done on the block by the normal force, well, the normal force, of course, is perpendicular, and let's draw the path this way. The path, of course, always looks like this. So that would be a right angle, cosine of 90 is 0. This would be case A. The work done by friction, if there is friction, well, friction points down the incline, and the motion is up the incline. That's an angle of 180 degrees. Cosine of 180 degrees is negative, so we get B, less than 0. The work done by the gravitational force. This one gets a little tricky, right? We have the object going up this way, and we have gravity pulling down that way. But we can break gravity into the part that's along the incline and perpendicular incline, and the perpendicular part doesn't really matter. But here we have that they're opposed. It's 180 degrees, so that's also less than 0. And then the net work done on the block, that's actually, we're going to defer for the moment. There's an easy way to compute it, but we haven't talked about it yet, so we'll do it next time. We'd actually have to go and add all these things up. Of course, what we can say is since it's moving at constant speed, then all these forces must balance. So the hand plus gravity, whatever force they have, has to be the same as friction pulling down the other way. So whatever positive work that the hand does, gravity and friction together add up to be the opposite. So we actually get that it will be 0.